Okay, so now let's take a look at how to turn some of those concepts into pseudocode to actually get you on the road to solving problem number 3. So the problem itself, well, you've read this before. Let's take as an example this shorter substring. That'll be easier to think about right here, right? Okay, let's do this. I'm going to copy that, go over here to Python Tutor, and just type up some pseudocode. Now, one quick thing here. You can use either single or double quotes for strings. I've been using double quotes just to be consistent. I'll use it that way. First of all, when you see this as a human, you think, okay, well, A and B and C, those are in order. Oh, the one that comes after C is a B, so you no longer have the order here. So, okay, the longest one you've seen so far is ABC. Then you keep going here, B and C and D, those are in order. B, C, D, that's also 3. It says report the first one, in case of ties, so ABC is your answer. Basically, what you're doing is you're going to be, and I'll make comments here to show this is not code itself, but iterate over S. So iterate over the string. Okay, so you're going to iterate over the string. Now, exactly how far you iterate over the string, that's going to be a little bit of a tricky issue that you'll have to deal with. You'll probably have some out of bounds errors here, the index out of range errors. But nevertheless, you're going to be iterating somehow over that string, looking at something. What are you going to be looking at? Well, actually, when you think about it, when you first start, you're comparing these two. Then you're comparing the next two against each other. You're comparing neighbors, essentially. So let's actually tab this over because we're all doing this in the process of iterating. So compare neighbors. Okay, and when I say compare neighbors, what do I really mean? I'm saying, essentially that if neighbor 1 is less than or equal to neighbor 2, then, I want to do something, right? So what I want to do, actually, I know right then that I've got a substring in alphabetical order. Okay, so that's good to know. Anyway, I'm comparing these neighbors, and then if I see this condition is holding, we talked about this before, then I know that I've got a substring in alphabetical order. And just knowing that I've got one is important, but I actually want to somehow store that value. So let's say store that value. And when I say store that value, what do I mean? Do I mean store the two neighbors, or do I mean perhaps take the second neighbor, neighbor 2, and add it on to neighbor 1 or something like that? You'll figure out how to do that, but there's a couple options for this. But when you store values, remember we showed that maybe you don't have anything yet when you're first starting. You can, of course, create a variable for that. So let's say create an empty string to hold alphabetical substrings. Why not, right? So, you might want to call that something like new S, and then that might be an empty string in the beginning, something like that. Okay, so you might have a string that's going to be holding those alphabetical substrings. Okay, so iterating over it, comparing neighbors, seeing if those neighbors are in order, if they are doing something. Another thing you might want to do is we're looking for the longest substring. So at any given point in time, you might want to consider like, hey, the substring I got right now, is that longer than any substring I've ever seen before? So is your current substring, oh, and you know what I should do here? This actually goes inside here, isn't it? Because if they are in order, then you could ask, is this longest substring actually longer than any previous one? Really pseudocodey, but you get the point. And if you have seen something that's longer than anything you've ever seen before, well, you sure probably want to remember that. And remember, you can check string length by doing len and then putting the string in. So there you go. That's probably one thing you might want to try. Okay, so another thing here is, let's say we haven't talked about this here, but what if they're not in order? What if it's this middle case where you get a C and then the next neighbor is a B? Well, you certainly don't want to store that as a long substring, and you don't want to even compare because you no longer have an alphabetical order substring. So in that case, you probably want to do something else, and that something else might be you don't have an alphabetical substring. So, maybe you want to get rid of whatever you were holding on to. So get rid of your current, let me do this right here. Your current alpha substring. Now, the challenge here is, even if you realize like, oh, I've got to reset my substring, well, you don't want to reset what the longest one was, right? Because if you get rid of that, well, then you totally forgot that, and that's not good either. So you can see where this is going. Maybe you want something else up here too. Even one more string to keep track of something. Okay. I won't say any more about that. This is your work, of course, to figure that out, but feel free to create strings that might be empty that hold different things. Maybe the one you're looking at, maybe the longest one you've ever seen. Sometimes they're the same, sometimes they're not the same. And you want to keep that differentiated. Okay? Yeah, so you also want to report the result, right? So when you're done, you got to print out the result. And that's it, actually. So you'll see people over on the forum talking about how many lines did it take you? Well, there's about 10 or 12 lines right here, depending if you leave comments in or not. It's not a huge problem, right? But seeing it and figuring out actually how to do it is a real challenge. So I've left a few things here that are not so clear that you'll have to think about, but see you on the forum if you have questions or other places that we might meet. All right, good luck on this one. See you in the class. Bye-bye.